Hello, my name is Sierra Lewis, and my professor is Professor Kimber Underdown, and this is for SPD 501, Foundations of Special Education. And the first question to answer is, what is the special education teacher's role in supporting learning, improving planning, and practice, upholding professional expectations and ethics, and collaboratively advancing the profession? And I personally believe that a special educator's role is critical to advocating and helping for students and children who are not able to do so for themselves. And this can come from various types of disabilities or exceptionalities that these students may have. I also think that it's important that we focus on learning and improving how students with these exceptionalities are able to process and function in an everyday classroom, whether that be from planning alternate ways of completing assignments or through the repetitive practice of writing, reading, that kind of thing. I also think it's important that as a special education teacher, because you are so tied into a vast majority in a group of people that are helping these students, that you are taking these professional expectations and the ethics and that you are upholding them to the highest standard, because you are in contact with therapists, counselors, sometimes social services, the parents, guardians, general education teachers, support staff, paraprofessionals, and you're making sure that everyone that is involved in the plan that is set forth for a specific student is working together to make sure that we are doing what's best for this student. And I think that's also important when it comes to advancing throughout the profession, continuously learning and keeping educated on new tactics, new programs, especially when it comes to 504s and IEPs. There's a lot of paperwork and a lot of restrictions or guidelines that you have to stick by and follow, and making sure that you are keeping up to date on that information is also critical to the student's education. The second question is, what dispositions that you currently possess will help you become a successful teacher, and what dispositions do you need to work on before you enter the classroom as a first-year teacher? So through the list of dispositions in the Dispositions Self-Assessment Survey, I personally have 3 that I strongly identify with. I believe that one of the ones that I identify with the most is that educators should be sensitive to an individual learning and social needs of students and embrace cultural diversity of the community. Personally, the school system that is nearest me is in a southwest, really rural location in the state of Virginia, but that does not mean that all those students that are there are from the same cultural, religious, ethical, moral background. And so making sure that you are not violating or you are not validating what those students live through at home or what their cultural and religious beliefs are does not help when you are trying to create a plan for them, because you can't take something that you think is correct and apply it to someone who comes from a different community or a different background and expect them to understand and comprehend that. I also think that it is critical and something that I uphold that educators should promote and support curiosity and encourage active inquiry. I personally am extremely creative. I have a creative-based mindset, and that is something that has really kept me going through education, is finding ways to relate a very logical practice, which such as being a teacher through education, and making it creative or making it a way to further your learning through application, practice, anything of that general nature. The third thing that I identify with the most is that educators should demonstrate professional friendliness, warmth, and genuine caring in their relationships with others while providing intellectual, emotional, and spiritual support. Obviously, these children that you are responsible for while they're in your school are going to see you interact with their parents, their general education teachers. They're going to see you interact with other students, administrators, anything of that nature. And through that interaction, you need to be showing these students that you are there to advocate and care for them, but you are not there to be rude to other professionals or demote how parents are feeling about their kids needing some kind of assistance. So it's really important that you as a professional and you as an educator and yourself are upholding your standards when it comes to interactions and collaborativeness through whether it be parents or educators. The second part of the question was to identify something that you should work on when it comes to getting into your first year of teaching. And I've identified 2 of those in here. And the first one is that the first one is that educators should believe that all students can learn and should set and support realistic expectations for student success. And while, yes, I do believe that every student can learn, I also believe that every student learns at a different rate. Every student needs different types of attention or accountability, or different types of assignments. And I think that also really comes from when I was growing up. I was just told, oh, well, you're smart, but you just need to apply yourself. And I think that's something that's kind of stuck with me. Not in the sense that I think every student just needs to apply themselves, because you can't guarantee that every student will want to. You can't guarantee that every student has the ability to apply themselves in your standardized type of educational setting. I think it's hard because educators are taught that their practice of education, their practice of teaching is based off of the results of standardized testing, or at least that's what it's like where I'm from, in the state that I'm from, that your basis of education, how you teach your students, is based off of your passing percentage of standardized testing. And I don't personally agree with standardized testing, but it is something that's still around. So I think I just need to work on setting realistic expectations for myself and for my students based off of their learning capabilities, and not relying on what standardized testing says. The second thing that I identified that I can definitely work on is educators should promote social justice and equity, maintain appropriate standards of confidentiality, and exercise fairness in all areas, including assessment. And I think simply where I live in a rural area, we are not exposed to a lot of social justice issues, which is unfortunate. And I think sometimes people around here are a little bit closed-minded when it comes to things, and having to make sure that I am being socially and ethically aware of what's going on, but also making sure that I'm not pushing ideas onto students or parents or other educators will be something that obviously everyone needs to be kind of maintaining and watching out for. I also think that exercising fairness in all areas, including assessment, that can come from when you're in a very small rural area. Teachers and other parents are going to say, oh, well, Sally down the street had this assessment and I want Billy to be assessed for it, and just trying to make sure that you are giving these assessments out to students and making sure that you are giving the accurate results, and not just basing it off of what you heard down the street or what another educator heard about another student. And so I think it's just maintaining that fairness and that equity along all lines of students in a small rural town. The third question is, what effect could personal biases have on expectations that students have for their students, and how could these biases affect their relationship with their students and their families? And I think with personal biases, it relays expectations that you want to see in your first year your kids hit new opportunities, new goals, improve, and obviously continue that throughout your time as an educator. But because you want to strive to show how well you are doing in your profession, sometimes I think that those biases about your personal aspirations and your personal expectations can be portrayed onto the students, and I think that that can affect your relationships with students and especially parents or guardians, because if you don't think that you are doing well as an educator, you may think it would be because your students aren't reaching certain goals. And then you can talk about that with parents and students and other teachers, and that can come across as kind of having biases, especially if your student doesn't come from a great household, or sometimes you may think that because a student has, for example, nonverbal autism, they're non-communicative, that you feel like you aren't reaching out to them because they're non-communicative, but you are putting that personal belief onto what that family is experiencing. And I think it's very critical to be aware of your personal biases, especially when it comes to your own personal classroom and your students and the relationships that you are sharing with those families.